We'll explore how intrusive thoughts work, what makes certain memories especially sticky, and what research says about moving forward from this mess. These thoughts can intrude uninvited and stick around far longer than we expect. The question isn't just why these memories linger, but what makes them so much harder to shake once they come up. They are sudden, unwanted flashes of memory, doubt, or worry that catch you off guard. These thoughts often arrive uninvited, and they can linger in your awareness, as you probably are aware, refusing to leave no matter how much you try to focus on something else or distract yourself. Now, psychologists describe intrusive thoughts as mental events that appear involuntarily and often generate some level of distress, anxiety, or discomfort. These intrusions commandeer, take over your attention against your will. So you might remember advice like, just stop thinking about it, just move on. But these rarely work. The mind doesn't work that way. The research shows that intrusive thoughts, especially after breakups, are universal. This might make you feel better out there. Nearly 90% of people experience them at some point. So it's crucial to understand that these thoughts don't mean something is broken or wrong with you. They're part of how the human mind processes stress, attachment, and loss. So according to contemporary cognitive behavioral theory, we're going to talk a lot about this, it's CBT, intrusive thoughts only become problematic when we react to them, worrying about their presence, trying desperately to make them stop, or using them to question our deepest selves. All right, the harder you fight these thoughts, the worse they become. So this ironic boomerang effect, as it's called. So Wegner showed that the more you try not to think of a forbidden topic, the more your brain scans for violations, amplifying the thought. So it's called the ironic process theory. That's what he coined the term. So thought suppression involves two mental processes. Let me explain this to you. A conscious operating process that tries to direct your mind away. Like, I'll think about cats instead of bears, right? It's conscious. That's the first step in the mental process. And then an unconscious monitoring process. Remember, we used to talk a lot about unconscious, the adaptive unconscious. I have a lot of videos. You can go back and check them out after this one. All right. So the unconscious monitoring process that scans for the unwanted thought to make sure it's not there. Like, am I thinking about a bear yet? Am I thinking about a bear yet? You may wonder how intrusive thoughts are different from rumination or worrying. I think this is a good point, right? Because we hear rumination, ruminating. Intrusions are spontaneous, brief flashes. A lot of thoughts come to your mind spontaneously. We have no control over it. But rumination is the analytic process that sustains and feeds on those flashes. So they work together, they work in concert. And rumination, a lot of that is in your control. You ruminate, but the intrusive thoughts actually trigger or cause the rumination. So intrusive thoughts are like the sparks, and rumination is like the fire that keeps burning after the initial burst. The consensus remains, the mind is designed to flag things that feel urgent, unresolved, or tied to our relationships and self-worth. That's what Freud talked about, unfinished psychic business. Particularly in the context of exes, intrusive thoughts are often your mind's way of working through loss, meaning, and vulnerability. Persistent intrusive thoughts often emerge from the brain's categorical tendency to prioritize unresolved or emotionally charged information, especially social bonds and attachment concerns. The work has shown these intrusions are not inherently problematic. The intrusion itself, these thoughts popping up by themselves, even if you're ex, they're not inherently problematic in and of themselves. But their persistence is almost always a product of how we interpret the thought rather than its content. Okay, so the key is in the interpretation, the meaning we assign to it. The mind naturally tries to resolve the uncertainty. It does this by replaying interactions, analyzing signs, imagining explanations, and seeking reassurance. All right, so understanding why certain thoughts about exes don't fade is as much a neuroscience question as it is psychological. And there are several key brain regions that are involved. There's the prefrontal cortex, which is focus and control, the amygdala, which you're probably very well aware of it, the emotional center, and the hippocampus for memory. So these serve as the control center for processing intrusive thoughts. There's some more brain parts here. The anterior cingulate cortex, which detects something being unresolved, activates when these thoughts arise. This network runs a simulation, replaying events or imagined outcomes in the quest for meaning or closure. So you are normal. The thoughts you're having, other people have had similar types of thoughts, and it's very well studied. So you're replaying events or imagined outcomes in the quest for meaning or closure. These two words at the end are very important, meaning and closure, as you'll see more. So the cognitive concept, by the way, of metacognition, I want to mention that. Thinking about your thinking, right? We sometimes do that. It's called metacognition. It helps explain recursive loops. So efforts to monitor whether you've gotten over it lead to recursive self-surveillance. And that creates more rumination and attention to the very thoughts you want to fade out, right? You're having a lot of thoughts about your ex day after day after day. And then you try to kind of do a reality check or a metacognition, right? So you're thinking, hey, how often am I thinking about this? So thinking like that, it makes it more frequent. You just want to forget about it. So let's continue here. So recent studies, they add even more nuance. There's something called the Broca's area in the brain. Broca's area, I don't know why they called it that. It's associated with inner speech. This is interesting. So it becomes unusually active during intrusive thoughts. It's an area in your brain. It's associated with inner speech. It becomes unusually active during intrusive thoughts. This explains the sensation of an unsilenceable internal monologue, replaying or inventing conversations with your ex, sometimes loudest and at the least convenient times. So there's this body-mind feedback loop. And I'm going to show you how the body triggers the thoughts. I'll explain it to you. I'm going to show you. So the mind and body work in a tightly interconnected loop after an attachment ends. When your body is in a heightened state of alert or discomfort, such as tension, anxiety, a racing heart, it acts as a constant internal reminder. And research shows that heightened bodily arousal can directly elicit unwanted, intrusive thoughts about the lost partner. So your body essentially signals to your mind, hey, something unresolved needs your attention. So the stronger the bodily pain or agitation, the more likely the mind will be triggered to produce distressing associations, memories, perpetuating this cycle of unwanted thoughts. So the neuroscience demonstrates that social pain, like rejection and loss, activates some of the same neural pathways as physical pain. For some, look, intrusive thoughts for some people are manageable, but for others, these thoughts are a huge source of distress, right? Hours lost to analysis, reassurance seeking, repeated review of the past. All right, so intrusive thoughts often spiral into rumination, right? Sustained, repetitive engagement with the memory, feeding into anxiety and avoidance. And the initial unwanted thoughts sparks a cascade. You're reviewing texts, scrutinizing conversations, seeking external reassurance, replaying events mentally in search of closure. All right, let's talk about meaning making, appraisal. This is very, very helpful here. This is an exciting point. So clinical psychology shows that it's not the mental pop-up, but what comes next, how you judge and appraise the thought that determines your suffering, okay? It's not the thought of them itself, it's what comes next, how you're appraising it, that causes your suffering. Like, why am I still thinking about this? Or what's wrong with me? So this secondary interpretation, the appraisal, is where suffering truly begins. So CBT shows that distress usually comes not from the original thought, but from the meaning you assign to it. So for instance, you get a thought and then you think the meaning you assign to it, oh, this must mean that I'm broken, or I'll never get over this. So these create shame and rumination. They turn a fleeting idea into an emotional snare. So research shows that people who ascribe catastrophic significance to their thoughts, like believing just having this thought means I'm damaged, they're the most likely to experience sustained distress. So they spiral into rumination, interrogating why these thoughts persist, instead of acknowledging that the mind often revisits unfinished emotional business. So appraisals, they sit at the heart of this process in cognitive therapy. Fundamental CBT teaching is the distinction between the intrusive thought, the initial neutral mental content, so the intrusive thought, and the automatic thought or the appraisal, the rapidly forming unconscious meaning that flows. There's the automatic thought that is triggered by the intrusive thought. It's unconscious. I don't want to say it's always unconscious, but it is largely unconscious. You get the intrusive thought by itself, it's harmless. But then you've got these automatic thoughts that are unconscious, and that's where the real work is. You want to dig deep. You want to sit with yourself. You want to figure out what this automatic thinking is, the meaning that you're making out of the intrusive thoughts you're getting. That's so crucial. So in therapy, you can hardly progress until you learn to distinguish between these two. So CBT further suggests that efforts to dispute the content of the intrusive thought without recognizing and challenging the automatic thought are often ineffective. And I read time and again in the literature that focusing on the intrusive thought is not the solution. That actually could be more problematic. Working with the intrusive thought is not the solution. It's what's surrounding that. It's what's triggered after that. It's the automatic thoughts, the unconscious, the automatic thoughts that arise unconsciously, but you can figure out what they are. All right, what about uncertainty? That's another key word here. Uncertainty, lack of closure, and how the brain craves answers. Uncertainty sustains the mind's drive for resolution, replaying memories and rewriting arguments in search of a satisfying answer. Is there uncertainty, right? When things are crystal clear about what happened, who did what, whose fault was what, and why things are the way they are, it's easier. But if there is uncertainty about what you did or what you think you could have done or should have done or what they did or why things happened the way they did or where your relationship stands in limbo or if you're ever going to see them again, blah, blah, blah. If there is uncertainty, you know that it's causing much more suffering, many more intrusive thoughts than if there wasn't any. This is crucial here. Uncertainty sustains the mind's drive for resolution, right? Replaying memories, rewriting arguments in search of a satisfying answer. So there's cognitive models that emphasize the role of intolerance of uncertainty in these cases. So uncertainty doesn't just frustrate, it sustains threat appraisals long past the point at which answers are possible. And crucially, it is not the intrusive thought itself, as we said, it is but the following automatic thoughts and appraisals, the instant, often unconscious interpretations that drive distress and compulsive behaviors. So the neuroscientific research confirms that your brain craves narratives and coherence. So when a story lacks closure, when the reasons and meanings behind an ending are unclear, the cognitive systems remain on alert. The search for certainty gives rise to what-ifs and endless mental loops. And these unresolved questions, what if I said this, they feed the persistence of intrusive thoughts. So staying with ambiguity is painful, right? This uncertainty, the ambiguity, we want closure. And the persistence of these memories is even more pronounced when uncertainty is involved. In the absence of closure, your mind's monitoring systems remain active, searching for cues, for explanations, or for meaning. And this intolerance of uncertainty keeps cognitive and emotional systems looping, sustaining focus on unresolved relationship themes. So there's studies that show ambiguity after a breakup strongly predicts repeated intrusive memories. It's a finding replicated in both cognitive and clinical settings. So on a biological level, your brain is trying to resolve signals, mismatches between what you hoped, what you experienced, and the deflating arrival of new reality. And when definitive closure is impossible, the related cognitive programs just keep running. So learning to accept that not every question can be answered and allowing for ambiguity, paradoxically, lessens the grip of persistent mental rehearsal. So in psychology, we see that you can absolutely change your relationship to intrusive thoughts and thereby reduce their power. CBT, one of the best studied interventions, helps you observe your thoughts objectively, question their accuracy, and gently challenge catastrophic interpretations. It's catastrophizing. So for instance, when you notice, I'll never get over this breakup, for example, instead of fighting it, CBT encourages seeing it as a mental event, a passing cloud, not a permanent reality. There's another form of therapy, ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. It builds on the CBT, teaching you to allow thoughts and feelings to come and go without being hooked by analysis. So ACT creates psychological distance, helping you recognize, oh, I'm having the thought that I'll never move on, which subtly shifts your relationship to the idea. So the science is clear. Forcibly suppressing thoughts tends to backfire, while observing them without judgment gradually reduces their intensity. And you can't control every memory that visits, but you can reshape how you respond to them. So some memories stay for a night, some for months, others far too long. But as you engage with your mind in ways we touched on, you can gain agency over the internal narrative. And the voices and stories that echo within your mind need not control your life story moving forward.